Hi, I tried that. Well, not really. I jumped out of an aeroplane once, and it was a terrifying experience, but there was a guy next to me, and he was even more terrified than me. He was crying for his mum. But I just go into this parachute mode. I jumped out of this aeroplane, and my hands went like this. Oh, sorry. My hands went like this, and I was going 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, check canopy, and at that moment, I sort of fainted. I can't remember a thing. I was just hanging there till the parachute just went out. And I was like alive, and Ipswich was under my feet. It was amazing. And I discovered a few days later I was pregnant, and my son is very into flying. So. Right, okay, I'm going to talk about something a bit more down to earth. I'm going to talk about culture. So, have you ever thought about this word, culture? It's a funny word, isn't it? It's one of those things that we all, one of those words that we all think that we know a lot about, but perhaps we don't. Because it's, we associate it with art, and we associate it with a theatre perhaps, or, sitting in a place like this, that's culture. Even watching television these days is considered to be culture. So it's, culture is a wide thing. And in Norway, even if you go into a shop, you get this fantastic blue, this milk cartons, and they're white, and they've got blue flowers on them, and it says cultured milk. And, I'm an artist, and I believe if I drink a lot of that milk, it will make me even more artistic, so I do that. But culture is an ancient word. It's actually Latin, and it derives from the word cultura, which means to cultivate, which really means to prepare the ground for something to grow out of. So that is what culture is. It's alive, it's bringing things alive, it's putting your hands into dirty soil and making things grow. And what will grow there? Okay, we can grow some food, to feed ourselves, that's a good idea. And, feeding ourselves is good, but we also have to store the food. And these days we have refrigerators, but, a few thousand years ago they didn't have refrigerators, so they needed to find other ways of preserving the food. And one way of doing it is salting, one way is drying, and another way is fermenting. And that is another curious thing. Fermenting, it's, when you ferment food, you need help. And you need help by these guys. They look like worms, but they're not. They're actually incredible creatures. They are the most fantastic creatures you can ever imagine. They're bacteria. And they became our collaborators in this process. So humans befriended bacteria, and they realized that bacteria had this amazing power of transformation. They can actually eat the sugar in any food, and they through the process of metabolizing it in their bodies, they're farting and they're burping, and then out on the other side comes something completely different that tastes so good, and that is just looks different, and that is heavenly, like. For instance, the world's most expensive wine, it wouldn't be that most expensive wine hadn't it been for the bacteria. Bacteria are fantastic. Or cheese, you wouldn't have cheese without bacteria. Or, dough, bread dough, delicious bread, beer, kimchi. There's loads of different fermented food all over the world. And who are making them? Well, it's not just humans. It's a collaboration between humans and bacteria. So, that is another form of culture. Culture is a localized phenomenon. And what does localized mean? Well, it means that culture actually comes out of the place. It comes out of the ground, it comes out of the sea, it comes out of the mountains, and it's a relationship between humans and the place. That is culture. Or it's a relationship between the bacteria and whatever substance the bacteria are growing in. That is culture. Culture is different from place to place. It develops differently. That's why, when we travel, we just enjoy tasting the different tastes from food from all over the world, and we enjoy looking at people who look different in different places. Became interested in culture, especially when I was, doing a lot of baking. A lot of my artwork became baking. And I was very interested in the process of fermentation in that baking, because what is this process? It takes time, it develops in certain conditions. It's a curious thing, and I was interested in that relationship between the humans and the bacteria. And I was really lucky because I met this guy. He's called Sandor Elix Katz. Imagine having a name like that. It's just incredible. I wish I was called something like that. Sandor Elix Katz also calls himself Sandor Sauerkraut because he absolutely loves fermenting food. So he holds a cabbage there, and you can ferment all kinds of things. You can ferment cabbage, and it makes beautiful surkål, which we like to eat here in Norway. Anyway, so he told me, on this course, he told me about this place in New York where you can get fantastic culture that had been cultivated for 100 years. And I was really lucky to get a trip to New York to present a film about bread. So I thought, oh, let's check out that place, which is this place called Yonanish Bakery. And that was started by a lady 100 years ago. She came from Eastern Europe, and she brought with her a jar of yogurt from wherever it was, Romania or somewhere, possibly up in the mountains, maybe it was Bulgaria. And in those days, when you traveled, you didn't bring an iPhone, but you brought your culture, because culture was everything. And people on their deathbed, they asked their relatives to look after their culture. So culture was a very, very important thing. So she brought with her the culture, her yogurt culture, that have families and have bred for generations. And she was selling it from that place there, Yonanish. And in that place, there was also, I found that amazing article from 1974, New York Post, and where it said that this very famous Hungarian film director, he was sending his private chauffeur with his limo to pick up a jar of yogurt every day because it was so incredible. And also these Armenian housewives, they were just saying how fantastic this yogurt was, that it could cure everything from deadly ills to stomach pains and to sunburns. So I just thought, oh well, I better get a jar of that yogurt and bring it back home and cultivate it. So I'm lucky enough to have spent 12 years on a lovely island in Nordland called Engeløya. And there I have some good friends, you see them there. And they make fantastic, there, beautiful, aren't they? And they give me milk. So I go there and I get milk. And so making yogurt is magic, but it's also incredibly easy. So what you do is you heat up the milk into about 80 degrees, and I don't have a thermometer, so I just wait to see when it bubbles. And when it bubbles like that, just like that, it's about 80 degrees. And that's sort of small bubbles. And then you take it off the stove and you put it in your sink that you've pre-filled with cold water, very cold water, put in there and stir it around to heat, to cool it down rapidly. And then when it's about finger warmth, which is about 37 degrees, you put it in your culture, which I keep in a jar in my fridge. Incredible. So I just put in 1 tablespoon of yogurt per liter milk and stir it gently, and then put it in preheated jam jars. Fantastic. Put that in a cold box, which is now a heat box because I fill it with loads of heated jam jars with hot water and hot water bottles. And I've put that in a warm place to ferment for about 10 hours. But, a warm place could be difficult to find. But if you've got a cat, you always know where that nice warm place is. So you can put it there. 10 hours it takes, and in those 10 hours, there's some incredible things happening, some magic. These guys come in, they swim in and totally transform the milk. And it's just magic, they are so incredible. I mean, imagine we all come from those, they're all, they were here millions of years before us, and everything is created by those. All living organisms are depending on those for our living, the bacteria. They're just magicians, they're artists, they're everything in one. They can swim like fish, they can photosynthesize like plants, and they can cause decay like fungus. They can also waft hydrogen, and they can fix nitrogen gas, and they can create sugar into vinegar, and they can also create alcohol. And that is just incredible, being such a small creature, and they're the simplest creatures on earth. There's something that you call prokaryotic beings, and that means, this very nice word, prokaryotic, it means that they don't have a membrane around their cells, and they don't have a nucleus in their cell, like us humans have. So they're super, super simple. But what they do is that they're masters at collaborating. They seamlessly talk to each other, and they just do things together all the time. And that's why they manage to do such incredible things. And bacterial cultures are alive. They have to be alive. They breathe, and they live, and they grow, and they create. And humans have collaborated with bacteria for a long time, and cultures, we have developed our own cultures. And our own cultures, what is a culture really? Well, you bring cultures alive by telling stories, and by performing theater, and by making art, and that's what culture is about. And why do we have it? Well, we have it so that we can connect to each other, and so that we can connect to the place, and also so that we can connect to our history. So it's a very important thing, culture. And the storytelling aspect is what's possibly one of the most important things with culture, that you keep on telling the stories, and you're sharing the culture to everybody and with everybody. But is it possible that cultures can die? Well, they can. If you put a bacterial culture heat them up to boiling point and leave it there for about 10 minutes, the bacteria will die. And, human cultures can die too. We're pretty good at eliminating bacteria, for instance, from our lives, from becoming being our best friends, like they have been for a long time before fridges. Bacterial culture have become our enemies. Now we've created all this sort of antibacterial thing. We wash our hands, and with antibacterial liquid, and we even have, they even have this amazing, see that sort of thing that you put your phone in? It's a UV light, and you can put your phone in a UV light, and it will, make all the bacteria disappear. So we just have developed this raging war against bacteria, and yet there's such a small percentage of them that are actually bad for us. So it's a really weird thing. But it's, and we're also eliminating bacteria by vacuum packing our food, so that we can just keep all the bacteria away. And by doing that, we're also eliminating the taste and all the sort of beautiful things that bacteria can do. And it's such a shame, because we used to be such good mates with the bacteria, and now we just hate them. We just hate them. It's such a shame. But sorry, I'll just go one back. In that process of eliminating all the bacteria, we actually get ill. And we think we're getting, we're doing it because we want to be well, and because we want to be healthy, and that's why we're doing it. And yet, people are getting ill. We've developed this sort of weird lifestyle illnesses like eczema and asthma, and just irritable bowel syndrome, and allergies. Loads of allergies are soaring. And scientists are actually working out now that it's because we are lacking bacteria in our everyday environment and in our food. So we need to bring them back. And, it's making us depressed, all this thing, it's just really making us depressed. And in Norway, in 2006, we were spending 485 million kroner on antidepressants. Did you know that? That's quite a lot of money. And in comparison, we spent 16.1 million kroner on the arts that same year, 2006. So it's actually 30 times more to Prozac than aesthetics. And, no wonder we're depressed. And, we're trying to eliminate our own culture as well in this process. We're just trying to erode the surface of the earth. At the moment, the earth is, the surface of the earth is eroding by 1% every year. That's quite a lot. We're also digging and extracting and penetrating and just trying to get everything out of it. And what we're actually doing is we're fighting a war against nature. And, we just seem to forget that nature is all around us, and that we are a part of it. So we just got this idea that humans are outside of nature, and then we can just do all these things to have a good life. And then, so what's left? What's left? And in it, in this process, while we're doing all those things, we're actually killing our own culture. And when you kill culture, you also kill the stories. You kill all the traditions, all the experiences. Your hands become redundant. Your tools become something that you exhibit in museums and put up on walls. And your mind gets dull, your senses become dull because you actually forget what it feels like to sense. If you only had cheese in vacuum-packed, packages, you don't know what real cheese feels like to taste. So it's a real shame. And it's so depressing. But is it possible to re-enliven culture? Is it possible to actually, start thinking differently and doing things differently? Well, this is a lupin seed. And what happened in Canada in the 1960s was that some people were walking and they came past this cave, and they found this cave, and in the cave were some bear bones, some bones from bears, and also these lupin seeds. And the lupin seeds had been lying there for 10,000 years. And these people took the lupin seeds and the bones to the museum, and they said, here's some fantastic things that we found. And then a biologist discovered this story 10 years later, and he thought, what if I try to get these seeds to sprout? So he created the conditions for the growth, he cultivated them, and guess what? Lo and behold, 10,000 years old seeds sprouted. It's incredible. Life is such a strong force, and that intuition, that force that is within everything living, every living organism, it's incredibly strong. It penetrates everything. And that gives me hope, that gives me real hope. And this also gives me hope. It's it's a picture from Morocco, and I had the pleasure of going to stay with this family a few years ago up in the Atlas Mountains in Morocco. And these beautiful women, there were 5 sisters living in the house. It was a very, very simple house. It had an earth floor, all the animals were in there. There was a loom there and a small light bulb with a very dim light. And these women were weaving the most amazing things. And they were sitting there with, in front of the loom, and there were 5 of them, and you can imagine 6 different colors, and the hands were going like that, 10 hands going, and they weren't talking to each other, and there was no pattern, no blueprint, no nothing. It was telepathy, it was magic. And I'm thinking, when that is possible, it just fills me with hope, but it also fills me with a sadness because there's something in our own culture that we've lost, and I think it's possible to get it back. It's a bit like the herring here that we see, the synchronicity of the herring, that, they sort of swim together. It's not just one individual, it's like the bacteria, they're collaborating. And I just jump over that. And, I can go back to it. It's actually the lemmings. Humans are the only species that, that have this strange idea that we're just sort of destroying our own ground. But lemmings, they have this idea that they like to jump over cliffs, so they commit collective suicide. And many people thought that was a really weird thing to do, but actually science have shown recently that it's a great thing because they control their own population by doing this. So it's actually quite a clever thing to do. But Darwin was claiming that evolution has happened through competition, and I think that is bullshit, because I think evolution happens through collaboration. Look at this amazing lichen here. Do you know what? It was actually fungus and algae that met, and they fell in love, and they were just so loving each other that they just couldn't live apart. So they decided to become one, to share their genetic material. And that is actually lichen, that is love. And that's how all evolution happens, through cooperation and not through competition. This is a fantastic crocodile, and you see that little bird inside that, that's an Egyptian plover. And that's, the plover has a job with the crocodile picking its teeth, because the crocodile eats meat and it gets really bad teeth, bad breath and all that. It's terrible for a crocodile. And then this Egyptian plover comes in and said, well, I'll give you a hand, I can just pick your teeth. And he gets his food like that. Or the amazing bees, just drinking nectar from the flowers and then just creating incredible honey. How amazing is that? Or corals, or, look at these, starlings. It's like, it looks like one bird, but it's actually loads and loads and loads of individuals, and they're all cooperating, working as one. A few years ago, I moved to, a year ago, I moved back to England, and I live in a place called Haslemere, which is just south of London. And it's a place where people have far too much money, too many Jaguars, they don't really talk to each other, and it's frankly quite boring. And I walked along a road that I've been walking a lot of times. And suddenly, last autumn I came there were loads of gardens. And I thought, where did these gardens come from? What's happened here? And it turns out that they're allotments. You call them kolonihager på norsk. And allotments is a fantastic thing because you can put yourself, in England, it's a weird thing because they have these old laws. And it says that if there's lots of people wanting an allotment, if there's more than 60 on the list, you can actually get an allotment, and the council has to make land available for you to dig and grow food. So, people have got allotments, and now they're growing their own food in this sort of sleepy Jaguar town. So it just shows that we're on the edge of a destructive culture where people have just thought, just get rid of it all, to a culture that people are actually wanting to do something. They're wanting to get their hands dirty, they're wanting to cultivate, they're wanting to participate, and they're wanting to collaborate. So we're on the edge of a living culture. Thank you very much.